No one will have her, of course, Lady Pennard announced to the whole crowded ballroom, laughing behind her fan and not troubling to lower her voice. The plain one, the elder Miss Ashby. We have quite given up hope of settling her. One does what one can, but there are limits. And across the length of that glittering room, where 1,000 candles burned in the great chandeliers, and the finest blood in the county turned to look and titter, the Duke of Knollwood set down his glass. He had been watching the elder Miss Ashby for the better part of an hour. Not the younger. The younger, Cecily, was the beauty of the season, golden and dimpled and forever at the centre of a laughing crowd, and Julian, Duke of Knollwood, had been informed by 3 separate matrons that evening that she would suit him admirably. He had not been watching Cecily. He had been watching the quiet one who stood a little apart against the panelled wall, in a gown that had plainly been made over twice, holding a cup of ratafia she did not drink, her eyes moving over the room with a still, private amusement that no one else in it seemed to possess. Her name was Eleanor. He had learned it earlier, from a footman, because he had wanted to know it. She was plain, they said, and it was true her sister was the prettier by the common measure. But Julian had spent a great many glittering evenings among the county's beauties, and had found them, without exception, to be exactly as interesting as a well-set jewel, hard and empty. Eleanor Ashby was not empty. He had watched her earlier stoop, unseen by anyone but him, to help an elderly dowager retrieve a dropped reticule, and stay to talk with the old woman a full quarter of an hour when she might have gone to be seen. He had watched her slip a pastry from the supper table to a servant's small hungry-eyed child half hidden by a curtain, a quick kindness she plainly thought no one had noticed. He had noticed everything. Now Lady Pennard's cruel laughter rang out across the room, and he saw the elder Miss Ashby hear it. He saw the faint colour come up in her cheeks. He saw her set her chin, that same small proud lift he was coming to recognize, and he saw that she would not give them the satisfaction of a flinch. Julian, Duke of Knollwood, was one of the wealthiest men in England and had been sought, flattered, and schemed over since he was 19. He crossed the ballroom. The whole room saw him move. That was the thing about being a duke. One could not so much as shift one's weight without 40 pairs of eyes remarking upon it. The chatter faltered, heads turned, mothers straightened. Cecily Ashby, at the centre of her admiring crowd, lifted her golden head and arranged her prettiest smile, entirely certain, as everyone in that room was certain, that the great Duke was crossing the floor toward her. He walked past her. He walked past Cecily, past the beauties, past Lady Pennard with her fan frozen halfway to her lips, and he stopped before the plain elder sister in her twice-made gown, and he bowed to her as low as he would have bowed to a queen. "Miss Ashby," he said, and his voice carried, because he meant it to. "I have been hoping all evening to be presented to you, and no one has had the goodness to do it, so I am reduced to introducing myself. I am Knollwood. Would you do me the very great honour of standing up with me for this next set?" The silence in that ballroom was total. Eleanor looked up at him, grey eyes, steady, wary, searching his face for the joke, for the cruelty, for the wager she plainly assumed lay behind it, because life had taught her that a duke did not cross a room for a plain girl unless it was to be unkind. "Your Grace is mistaken," she said quietly so only he could hear. "The lady you want is my sister. She is just there. I will present you gladly." "I am not in the least mistaken," Julian said, just as low. "I have been watching your sister for an hour, and I could not tell you one true thing about her. I have been watching you for the same hour, and I could tell you a dozen. You are kind when you think no one sees. You are proud when they are cruel. You gave a hungry child a cake and thought I did not notice." He held out his hand. "I noticed. Dance with me, Miss Ashby, not to spite them, though it will, but because I find you are the only person in this room I have the smallest wish to know." For a long moment Eleanor did not move. Then, because a lady could not well refuse a duke before the whole county without causing a scene, and perhaps, he hoped, for some other reason she would not yet admit, she laid her gloved hand in his. He led her out onto the floor, and the musicians, recovering themselves, struck up, and the Duke of Knollwood danced with the plainest and poorest girl in the room while the finest company in the county stared and whispered and did not know where to look. Cecily's dimpled smile had gone quite fixed. Lady Pennard's fan had stopped altogether. You have made yourself a great deal of trouble, your grace, Eleanor murmured as they turned. They will talk of nothing else for a month. I do hope so, Julian said. I find I dislike Lady Pennard exceedingly, and I should like her to have something to chew on. A startled laugh escaped Eleanor, quickly stifled, but he caught it, and something in his chest turned over at the sound. You are laughing, he said, pleased. Do it again. It is a great deal better than your sister's smile, and I have watched 100 women practice that smile in 100 mirrors. You should not say such things of Cecily. She cannot help being admired. No, and you cannot help being overlooked by people too dull to look properly. I do not hold it against your sister that she is pretty. I hold it against this entire room that not one of them troubled to discover you are far more than that. He turned her under his arm and drew her back. Tell me true, Miss Ashby. Do you dislike me? For if you do, I will take you back to your wall and trouble you no further, and you need only say the word. But if you do not, I should very much like to call on you tomorrow. Eleanor searched his face again, and this time Julian thought she found what she was looking for, which was that he was entirely in earnest. I do not dislike you, she said low. I distrust you a little, because I have never in my life been chosen first at anything, and it is a strange and frightening feeling to be chosen now before them all, and to wait for the catch. There is no catch, Julian said. There is only a man who has been bored for 10 years, and has just this evening been thoroughly, gladly, permanently on board. Tomorrow, Miss Ashby, say yes, she said. He called the next day, and the day after, and every day that followed. He sat in the Ashbys' shabby parlour and drank weak tea, and let Eleanor's mother flutter and her sister sulk. And he had eyes for none of it, only for the quiet elder daughter, who argued with him about books and blushed when he praised her and did not, would not, could not be flattered into being anyone but herself. He had known great beauties and clever heiresses and the practised charm of a dozen seasons. He had never before known a woman who did not want anything from him, and it was, he found, the most intoxicating thing in the world. Lady Pennard came to call on the Ashbys within the week, she who had never troubled to notice them before, all sweetness now, angling to be seen on friendly terms with the family a duke favoured. Eleanor received her with perfect, cool courtesy, and offered her tea, and did not once remind her of the ballroom. It was Julian, arriving mid-visit, who set his cup down with a small deliberate click and said, pleasantly into a lull, Lady Pennard. I could not help but recall the last time we were in a room together. You were saying, I think, that no one would have Miss Ashby, that you had quite given up hope of settling her. He turned to Eleanor with a warmth that made the older woman go pale. You will forgive me contradicting you. I mean to have her, if she will consent to have me, and I have not the smallest doubt I am the most fortunate man of my acquaintance. It seems the county's judgment was not to be relied upon after all. Lady Pennard found, quite suddenly, that she had another engagement and did not stay for the rest of her tea. He proposed to Eleanor a fortnight later, in the shabby parlour, on one knee, with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, and that he had brought in his pocket every day for a week, waiting for the courage. She wept, the first time he had ever seen her cry, and told him she had spent her whole life certain she would never be wanted, and had made her peace with it, and did not know how to unmake that peace now that a great foolish duke had come and overturned it. You need not unmake anything alone, Julian said, holding her hands in his. I will spend a very long life making you certain. Marry me, Eleanor. Let the whole county chew on that. They were married at Knollwood, in the great chapel, and the same fine company that had tittered in ballroom crowded the pews now, all smiles, none of them daring to remember what they had said. Cecily wept prettily and caught the eye of a viscount and was, in her way, happy enough. Lady Pennard was not invited, an omission the Duke arranged personally and enjoyed thoroughly. And Eleanor Ashby, who had stood against a ballroom wall in a twice-made gown and been called the plain one no one would have, walked up the long aisle on her father's arm to a man who had crossed a crowded room past every beauty in the county to bow to her alone. She was not the prettiest woman there by the common measure. Julian, watching her come, thought her the loveliest thing he had ever seen in his life, and knew, with the settled certainty of a man who has at last found the one true thing after a great many false ones, that he always would. Years later, When they were both grey, a young girl at some glittering ball would stand alone against a wall, overlooked, twice-made gown, chin held proud against the whispers. And the old Duchess of Knollwood would see her. She always saw them, she who had once been such a girl herself, and would send her husband across the room to bow. And the Duke, grey now but no less certain, would go gladly every time, remembering the night he had walked past the whole bright county to the only person in it worth the crossing. For he had learned that night long ago the thing the county in all its glittering wisdom had never troubled to learn, that the girl no one will have is very often the one worth having above all the rest, and that it takes only one man with the sense to look, and the courage to cross the room, to prove it before them all.